In the shallow waters of the Gulf of America, steel giants rise above the waves, sentinels of an industrial past. For decades, these offshore platforms have fueled America's energy needs. But beneath the surface, another story unfolds. One of coral, fish, and renewal. This is the Rigs to Reef story, a journey from oil platforms to thriving marine sanctuaries. It's an alliance of nature and man. It's a tale of discovery and ambition, and fragile ecosystems hanging in the balance. It begins with exploration. Off the Gulf Coast, seismic boats map the ocean floor, uncovering hidden reserves of oil and gas. When oil or natural gas is found, massive platforms take shape. Steel forged on land, towed to sea, and anchored on the sea floor. For 20 years or more, they hum with activity, pumping energy to shore. Yet, as crews labor above, life blooms below. Almost instantly, these structures become islands of habitat in a flat, sandy ocean desert, the only homes for coral and marine life across the shallow Gulf. But wells run dry. When production fades, decommissioning begins. For many platforms, this is the end, hauled away to scrapyards. But since the enactment of the National Fishing Enhancement Act of 1984, another path has emerged: Rigs to Reef. The Rigs to Reef program provides an alternative for operators to leave parts of the structure in place, donating it to state-managed reef programs that follow national guidelines. It's a bold idea, a partnership between industry, states, and nature. Yet, it's tangled in a web of permits and time.
Our oceans make up 70% of the planet. Some people call us the blue marble because it's really mostly ocean.
The ocean is also not very well studied. We know more about the surface of the moon than we know about the deep ocean. But we've become very reliant on our ocean resources. We use them for transportation, for energy, for food. Our mission as scientists is understanding how we can use that resource in a way that doesn't use it up.
The Gulf is a very active oil and gas industry. Platforms are constantly being installed and decommissioned.
I know that there are a lot of people out there that are sincerely concerned about the environment, that think when oil and gas platforms are removed, that it's going to be an environmental victory, but it's going to be completely opposite of that. You're going to really destroy one of the most understated and underreported biodiversity achievements that we've seen.
What the oil platforms provide is habitat. They've been studied for over 30 years. They've found that those platforms are some of the most productive ecosystems on the planet. And when these structures are removed, we also lose that habitat.
The truth is, we're seeing a lot of these platforms quickly be removed. We are losing those habitats. We are losing Empire State Building's worth of marine communities.
This is an environmental emergency, and if we pull these rigs up and these reefs go away, all of us will suffer.
There are oil platforms in every ocean. Can we find opportunities for conservation of our oceans at this really unique intersection where we have industry and the environment meeting?
The entire Gulf Coast of Louisiana, it's really a magical place. For hundreds of years now, settlers and explorers into the New World have benefited from the fisheries and the tributaries that feed the Gulf. The Gulf has given great opportunities to the state of Louisiana and the country.
People come to the Gulf for lots of reasons. One of the main reasons they come is to catch fish.
Pretty much all summer, people are going to be coming from all across the country and sometimes all across the world to go out into the Gulf or go back into our bays and our marsh and catch fish.
Through tourism, major shipping ports, energy production, as well as fisheries. It's whether you're recreational, weekend angler, or commercial fishermen that provide fish from the Gulf to the rest of the country. The Gulf is a treasure to our economy and our culture and our way of life.
But there's certainly concerns moving forward. Across the Gulf, habitat is being lost at such an alarming rate. From Florida to Texas and everywhere in between, the fisheries start to suffer. We're seeing it already. We can't afford to lose this habitat because it is so critical to how we live our lives.
I grew up in South Central Louisiana. I think people here appreciate conservation, they appreciate the outdoors, and Louisiana is a great model for how industry and the environment can work together.
Louisiana's nickname is Sportsman's Paradise. We have historically had just some of the most incredibly productive fisheries in the world.
It's one of the few places around the country where you see so many different ecosystems overlapping each other.
The Mississippi River, the extensive network of marsh and barrier islands and beaches, and all of these things created all of this magnificent habitat.
When we fish, we look for good habitat. That's just rule number one.
Habitat is basically where the fish live. It's their home. Some of them are migratory and they orient to certain structures certain times of the year as it provides an area where they can ambush prey or they can get out of the current. But in the case of a lot of reef fish, like snapper and grouper and amberjack, they'll orient to a structure and that'll be their home.
We've got some great habitat, and a lot of that habitat is due to artificial structures.
A lot of people have that stigma in their mind that, oil field and fisheries, they're opposed. And actually, the oil field being here in Louisiana was one of the greatest things that ever happened to our fishery.
When I first came to Congress, representing an urban area, hearing about how this biodiversity has been created around these rigs was absolutely fascinating to me, and something that I think that a lot of the public doesn't know about.
We have work to do when it comes to those who believe that there's no place for these structures in our natural habitat. I'd like for them to go see the life that exists under one of these and try to tell me that again.
The Rigs to Reefs permitting process is a complex dance of federal agencies and states with overlapping responsibilities. The process starts with the Army Corps of Engineers, responsible for ensuring that reef placement doesn't obstruct navigation. Then there's the Bureau of Safety and Environmental Enforcement. They oversee platform decommissioning, enforcing strict rules under the Outer Continental Shelf Lands Act, and ensuring operators meet rigorous safety and cleanup standards before transferring liability to the state. The Bureau of Ocean Energy Management is charged with ensuring reefing aligns with lease terms and federal environmental laws. At the heart of it all are state artificial reef coordinators. They work with operators to build proposals, secure permits, and navigate the maze of federal rules. Their mission? To align state ambitions with environmental and safety standards to ensure we preserve as much of the remaining ecosystems as possible.
Basically, ladies, where we're going, it's called the rabbit patch. Each square, that's a platform.
About how deep is the water there?
Anywhere between 60 and call it 250 feet of water.
I met Amber when we were in graduate school at Scripps Institution of Oceanography. We are co-founders of Blue Latitudes, which is a women-owned marine environmental consulting firm.
We understand people who maybe have a negative perception of these platforms. That's where we started too. I mean, of course, you think about offshore oil and gas and your mind immediately goes to incidences like oil spills, things like that. But seeing is believing.
I vividly remember the first time I got to go diving on an oil platform. I had the opportunity to work on the BP oil spill as a field tech, and while we were out there, we worked with a lot of fishermen, and they would always be talking about how they couldn't wait to go fishing on the weekends on an oil platform. I became really intrigued by that dichotomy of oil platform, beautiful reef.
When you are on a boat approaching an oil platform from the surface, they look like an industrial, menacing giant.
But what you see above the surface, just like the tip of the iceberg, is really just a small fraction of what's actually there. And same with the marine ecosystems. When we dove into the water, I forgot that it was an oil platform.
The second you go beneath the surface, you see a structure that's so complex, beams and cross beams, and it's covered with life.
You actually get to see these really healthy corals, these healthy fish populations. They become these pristine microcosms of life.
Beginning in the late 1940s, oil and gas production started putting steel in the water that allowed organisms from the bottom of the food chain on up to start accumulating.
It creates a place for the small fish to thrive. The big fish come to eat those. And it's the whole ecosystem from top to bottom.
If you've ever gone fishing somewhere in the Gulf, you probably have fished around one of these reefs and didn't even know it.
Around this part of the Gulf, you grow up fishing around these platforms. I did it my whole life. My kids are doing it now. Everybody that fishes here fishes around oil and gas structure.
I grew up in Hot Springs, Arkansas, fished all my life. Whether you're fishing in lakes or rivers or in the ocean, the thing you look for often is structure. You know, what better place than South Louisiana, offshore, around the oil rigs. That's where you find the fish.
The folks that work on the rigs are the same people that visit those rigs on the weekend to catch fish. Here in Louisiana, the energy industry and the fishing industry know how to live together. I mean, we've been drilling off the coast since the 1940s, and yet the fishing in Louisiana has always been great. I mean, you see it in the big game tournaments that happen each summer, and look at the size of the fish that they're catching. I think that speaks volumes for having that infrastructure in place and leaving it there.
These rigs are already providing habitat, kind of like Field of Dreams. You build it and they will come. It's going to cost a lot more money to haul it out of the ocean and build habitat. So why not just do the logical thing and use the habitat you've already got there?
As the well that a rig services becomes dried up, there are laws that require that structure to be pulled out. But what happens is you take that beneficial habitat away with it. These structures are not just oil and gas structures. They're structures that have become critically important for fish habitat.
Once a rigs to reef permit is approved, the real work starts. Before any reefing begins, safety and environmental risks are tackled head-on. Wells are sealed tight under strict federal standards to prevent leaks. The structure is scrubbed clean of leftover oil or debris. Then, the state secures a permit from the Army Corps of Engineers to ensure the reef will not pose a threat to passing ships. At the end of the process, the reef becomes the state's responsibility, with operators contributing a donation to the state, typically half the savings from the cost of full removal. In Louisiana alone, these funds have poured millions into reef conservation since 1986, all without touching taxpayer dollars. Inspected for stability and free of oil and gas production equipment, these structures pose no threat, just a skeleton for nature to claim. In a sea with little else to offer, they are lifelines for biodiversity.
Marine habitat is a big deal in general because, one, we're doing a pretty good job of degrading it, but it's where animals live. It's their homes, their grocery stores, their protections from predators. Habitat is the foundation of a marine ecosystem. But particularly west of the Mississippi River, the bottom of that Gulf is characterized by just pretty much mud and sand. So as these structures went in, they provided habitat in an otherwise barren bottom. They really become an oasis of life in an area that is really structurally mundane.
Recreational and commercial fishermen rely on bountiful harvests. And they are looking for areas in our oceans where they can find plentiful fish species. And in an area like the Gulf that's mostly a soft bottom sediment environment, they are targeting the oil platforms.
And I think that relationship's very important because it starts to alleviate fisheries pressure on our natural reefs.
We have natural banks that are very sensitive. There's not many of them. There's special marine life that occur on there that, if we destroy them, they're not coming back. The fishery or the people doing the fishing don't necessarily care if they're fishing in a natural area or an artificially created area. So these structures still provide the fishing opportunity, but you're not impacting a natural environment.
There are some who think that these rigs are basically just like putting a salt lick out for deer, and it's not like that.
Attraction versus production, it's that age-old question. Are fish spawning, breeding, growing to maturity on these platforms, or are they merely temporarily attracting fish? And one of the ways that we can study that is through stable isotope chemistry, which is basically a fancy way of saying you are what you eat. So we can look in the gut of the fish to observe if what it's been eating throughout its lifetime actually originated from the platform itself. We found there's some of the most productive ecosystems on the planet.
We wouldn't be talking about this if they didn't attract. So the real question was, is there more fish in the Gulf because these structures are in place? At the Hart Research Institute, we focused on red snapper because of the importance of that species, and there was no fish in our control sites. They put the structures in, and then all of a sudden the red snapper abundance shot up from little ones growing, and they grew, and we put sophisticated tags in them. We tracked them. They remained on these structures for years and years, and we showed that production does come from these structures. In fact, they allow the sustainability to occur.
In the Gulf, a lot of commercial and recreationally important species are widely supported by offshore oil and gas platforms, including grouper and a lot of apex predators such as sharks. Same with the red snapper population.
Red snapper is just a fisherman's dream. It is a ball to catch, but they typically orient to structure. The availability of red snapper to the recreational community has exploded, and the effect on our local economy is palpable.
Since the creation of the Rigs to Reef program, over 600 platforms have been transformed into artificial reefs, their steel frames left to nurture marine life. Yet cracks are showing. The program is a slog of red tape, too slow for the urgency at hand. Only 28% of eligible platforms make the cut. The rest are lost to full removal, and with them, the habitats they've fostered. Time is a major snag. Federal law sets a 1-year deadline for full removal, yet the permitting often stretches to as much as 4 years. Complex planning, permitting, and execution get bogged down by overlapping rules from the Bureau of Safety and Environmental Enforcement, the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, the Army Corps of Engineers, and state reefing programs. Ecological impacts vary by reefing method. Traditionally, reefing meant towing platforms to pre-approved designated reefing areas, a costly, disruptive process. Moving them kills the ecosystems already thriving on their legs, resetting the clock by decades on re-establishing new habitat. Toppling in place preserves some of the ecosystem, but forever destroys the habitat for coral and marine species that only exist higher in the water column. There's a better way. Partial removal or reefing in place. Leave them where they stand, where life has already taken root. It's simpler, cheaper, and preserves what's already there. Reefing in place could be the new standard in habitat preservation.
People think about South Louisiana, they think about New Orleans as having amazing food, so it's a foodie destination. We kind of have a head start on that because of the abundance of the Gulf. Literally record numbers of crawfish, oysters, blue crabs, the most consumed seafood in the nation, shrimp. All of that translates into South Louisiana being the top commercial seafood producer in the continental United States.
The fishing is great. You walk into the marinas, they're full of people. You go to the restaurants, they're packed. That is good for our community, which in turn becomes economic impact to the coast.
It's not just these coastal communities, but also think about metropolitan areas. Where I live in Dallas-Fort Worth, this is one of the largest metropolitan areas in the entire country, and we have thousands and thousands of people who like to spend money so they can do things like fish. I mean, there is a whole industry that our economy is tied to.
1.5 million barrels of oil a day come right out of the port less than 4 miles from here. So these platforms provided the lifeblood for America. When they finish their useful life, take the equipment off, and it becomes a habitat for more marine life. Tell me what's better than that. But it's a fight. Believe me, it's a fight.
Time is running out. Of the 7,000 platforms once dotting the Gulf, only 1,300 structures, 1,100 platforms remain. Regulators push for swift removal, and the pace is accelerating. These reefs, vital to marine life, are vanishing faster than they're saved. Their disappearance could forever change the culture and communities along the Gulf Coast.
One time, we had about 7,000 of these oil and gas platforms in the Gulf that created this tremendous explosion of habitat and fish production.
Over the last 20 years, we have seen this rapid decline, and we're down to somewhere around 1,100 today. That is our fish habitat.
Of course, we as anglers hate to see these structures go because they've been such productive hotspots for us over the years. It's harder and harder for the average angler to go out to their favorite platform and find fish. The platforms are gone.
I've been a charter captain for 25 years offshore. Used to, everybody had their own platform. Now we're fighting over the few platforms that's left. You know, and it's not just one rig here and one rig here. We're losing whole fields of rigs. These structures hold all of life. If you got just a barren piece of bottoms, the fish populations are gonna come down.
Commercial fisheries that provide the seafood and the incredible cuisine that we have to compete with one another because there's not enough habitat for everybody. It creates problems for these fisheries. And if our fisheries here suffer, then our entire coastal economy suffers.
Recreational fishing, especially saltwater fishing, offshore fishing out here, is very, very expensive. If you come down here and you don't have the same high quality opportunity to fish that you did, you may stop spending the money on it. And we're here at Bridgeside Marina in Grand Isle, and this is just one of dozens and dozens of big marinas along this coast, dependent on having a healthy fishery.
If the platform wasn't here, I figure we'd lose probably 60% of our business. We got boat slips, we got the deli, live bait, housing, tackle, food, and it's all recreational, tourist related stuff that's our business.
Just over the winter time, there was a platform that I used to go to every time, and they yanked it up, scraped the bottom. It's completely gone now. Very disappointing, and it makes you wonder where the fish go after that.
In some other areas, you have a lot of natural reefs and coral and things like that. Off the coast of Louisiana, that is an exception. So what we've done by installing energy infrastructure here is that is the structure that's the habitat for the fisheries. The irony is that there are all sorts of federal regulations and programs that actually require protection of fish habitat. And so whenever you're coming in and you're looking at things myopically through an energy lens and you're requiring the removal of the infrastructure, you're removing the habitat that many federal laws and regulations are actually protecting.
Once oil and gas platforms reach their decommissioning phase, oil and gas companies, they're required by law to remove it from the water. When these structures went into place decades ago, it was to obviously extract the oil and gas. No one quite realized how the marine life would come to rely on these structures. In many areas, including Louisiana and Texas, and really, nationwide, we're suffering from pretty severe habitat loss. So we have an opportunity here in the Gulf to recover from that and create habitat, restore habitat, if we conserve what we have already in place.
Good stewardship of our oceans would mean that when we do take, we're able to give back. And that can look very different in a variety of different settings. Rakestraw Reef is a really great example of that balance. In a lot of parts of the Gulf, we have these areas called designated reef planning areas. Sites that have already been set aside for a multitude of structures to be placed in as artificial reefs.
When a company has a platform that is scheduled to be removed, they can apply to have it placed in the Rigs to Reef program, where a platform can be cut and then moved to this reefing zone.
Essentially, the permitting process exists to ensure that our safety and environmental concerns are met. Safety and liability are the first principles that we're trying to meet. Making sure that the projects are done responsibly and in a way that's good for everyone.
Whether they're going to be decommissioned on land or going into the Rigs to Reef program, either way, the oil associated with that platform has to be capped and secured to make sure that there's not going to be any chance of hydrocarbon leakage. So from an environmental perspective, they're exactly the same.
Our fishing off the coast of Louisiana is better than anywhere else in the Gulf. It's absolutely contributed by the oil and gas industry and the structure that's out there. Instead of taking the idle iron off of the seafloor out of its place, why not leave it in its place?
Got him.
Right now we're fishing a rig to reef. We just got a nice cobia. They cut a rig off in this block and they put it back down there and it comes up about 30 foot. It's an excellent spot to catch some fish.
It really comes down to that basic step of creating the structure and the habitat. And it's great that we can have this infrastructure out there that when it's done producing oil and gas, it's still got a functional use going forward.
I'd like to see as many companies as possible apply to our Rigs to Reef program with the structures that they have in place. It's not a quick process, it's not an easy process, nor is it cheap. I think we need to identify the ways that the program can continue to improve, but it is critical that we maintain as much of this habitat as we possibly can, and so the process is necessary.
When oil and gas platform is put into the Rigs to Reef program, currently it has to be a standard of 80 feet below the water line to make sure that large container ships can pass over it. It would be ideal if we could maintain these structures in a standing orientation, because then you have the benefits of the benthic species all the way up to the pelagic species on the surface.
Most natural reefs are horizontal. They stay at one level, and so you're just going to have one type of habitat. An oil platform, you have habitats on top of habitats on top of habitats that all play in with each other.
Oil platforms, they can be as tall as the Empire State Building. That creates a ton of real estate for marine life to grow and colonize on the structure. An oil platform was designed to be in the ocean, so we know that they last a very long time, and their sheer size and their design really makes for them to be excellent artificial reef candidates.
There was a study published in 2004 that found 11 different species of corals on oil and gas platforms scattered around the northern Gulf, 9 of which are commonly found in the Florida Keys and the Caribbean. One of the most abundant species that they found is critically endangered in the rest of the world, yet it's thriving here in the northern Gulf.
Coral reefs are not only the habitat for many species of fish, but they also act as a carbon sink and help to decarbonize our oceans. So the Gulf is really benefiting from having these structures in place.
Several states spend a lot of money putting artificial structure in the water in order to provide better habitat. The thing is, oil and gas platforms we have out there, that's free.
If you were going to remove the remaining platforms that are out there, you would have to spend somewhere around $3.9 or $4 million per platform to replace the habitat that you're removing. You know, said another way, billions of dollars to try and recreate habitat that the energy infrastructure today and historically has provided.
There's some estimates when it was fully in place, there was about $18 billion worth of habitat in the water. So it's kind of absurd that we would remove flourishing ecosystems and not retain that habitat in the water when it's there, and of course do that in a very sustainable, environmentally friendly way.
Some people believe that by reefing a rig in place, that you're given a pass, you're allowing the energy companies to get a discount, and that's not the case at all. In fact, the savings are returned back to conservation activities in those very states.
That is bad thinking when you think you can't have a strong economy and a healthy environment at the same time. It's just the opposite. You need a strong economy to have a sustainable and healthy environment.
And then you also think about the fact that you would be having this profound impact on our economy because you would be having an adverse impact on the recreational and on the commercial fisheries in this area. It would increase our trade deficit, increase our dependence upon foreign fisheries. So a lot of misinformation, but this really does make a lot of sense. It's a win-win-win.
There's a lot of concern about the number of oil and gas platforms that are nearing the end of their production life. It can be a challenge for the state when a whole bunch of them have to come out at one time. So you've got permits by the Coast Guard, the Corps of Engineers, the Bureau of Safety and Environmental Enforcement, the state's own regulations. And if there's a bunch of them being decommissioned at one time, the producers are just going to scrap them on shore. Once they take it in to scrap it, we lose everything. It might have been a reef ecosystem that took 40 or 50 years to build up. It will be a major hit.
Change is needed to unlock Rigs to Reef's full potential. Streamlined permitting could reduce wait times from years to months. Clearer rules, early planning, and faster collaboration among the federal and state agencies could boost participation by operators. Most critically, federal legislation to allow reefing in place would keep platforms where they stand, cutting costs and complexity. With every reef saved, half the savings fund state conservation. More reefs, more money, more life. From 600 reefs saved, we could leap to hundreds more before the Gulf's remaining 1,300 structures disappear, and with them, the only existing habitat across the vast majority of the otherwise barren seafloor in the shallow waters of the Gulf of America.
Marine reefs are some of the most abundant and prolific and vibrant habitats on Earth. We would not remove an acre of rainforest, yet we remove this critical habitat without thinking twice about it. It's important that whatever way we choose, we find a way to reef as many of these structures as we possibly can.
There are oil platforms in almost every ocean on the planet, and each one's going to have its own unique ecosystem.
Around the world, areas that have oil platforms to decommission, they aren't really sure what to do with the structures other than completely remove them. And so many countries are looking to the Gulf as an example.
There's also a responsibility from the policymakers to listen, to learn, and to look before we make knee-jerk reactions that, quite frankly, we'll never get back. And that's not even taking into account the marine life that we're losing or the marine life that we're saving.
They'll put you in jail for breaking a piece of coral. Yet we'll dynamite a rig that's a living coral reef just because it's not a natural structure. Well, how can we let that happen?
I want to really put a call to action out there to everyone. With us having so few of these habitats left, if we don't act soon, the biodiversity, the marine life, the habitat that's out there, it all goes away. And once it goes away, it doesn't come back.
Everybody benefits from maintaining this habitat. The ecosystem benefit, anglers benefit, the working coast benefits. It's a benefit for all.
We use our oceans, and we're going to continue to use them. But we need to figure out a way to keep using them without using them up, while also preserving it for our own kids.
It's important to find ways together to preserve and protect it. Because ensuring the health of the ocean is really ensuring the health of life on land.
The future of Rigs to Reefs isn't just steel and permits. It's a promise to our oceans, our communities, and the life that flourishes when we get it right. To fulfill that promise, urgent action is needed. And 3 bold moves could turn the tide to ensure that we maximize the ecosystems that currently thrive on the 1,300 remaining structures in the Gulf. First, improved permitting speed. Federal legislation could amend the National Fishing Enhancement Act to establish a unified task force. The Bureau of Safety and Environmental Enforcement, Army Corps, and state coordinators to promote the policy of maximizing reefing opportunities and to coordinate overlapping permitting processes. Second, reefing in place. federal legislation could prioritize reefing platforms in their original locations, reducing ecological disruption and permitting delays. Third, increased funding for state conservation programs. Federal legislation could standardize a fixed donation model for conventional structures in less than 400 feet water depth to incentivize operator participation in rigs to reefs, which will increase donations to Louisiana, Alabama, Mississippi, and Texas for conservation efforts. These three actions, in tandem, would address the program's core challenges and transform rigs to reef into a scalable, efficient lifeline for the Gulf's marine ecosystems. This isn't just steel reborn as a sanctuary. It's a Gulf renewed, a legacy secured. It's ours to shape right now. From giants of energy to cradles of life, the Gulf's future is in jeopardy. The question remains, will we act in time?